Yesterday, Iran launched retaliatory missiles at a U.S. military base in Qatar, a move which is in retaliation for America's airstrikes on Iran's three key nuclear facilities over the weekend. Following intense escalations from these attacks, U.S. President Donald Trump has called for peace and announced a complete and total ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran.
The Iranian strike, which seemed to have been a deliberate measure, saw Iran reportedly providing advance warning to both Qatar and the United States before it hit. President Trump thanked Iran for the early notice and declared that the time for peace is now. Though all Iranian missiles were intercepted and no casualties were reported, there are concerns over the effect of war on global oil prices, the ongoing 12-day war between Israel and Iran, and you could say with the United States of America right there in between. Well, joining us to discuss this, we do have global affairs analyst Collins Nweke, who is taking time out to speak with us and concerning this issue. Well, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe and Wenga, for having me.
Iran's parliament approved a measure. Let's start off with this very vital one. They approved a measure to actually close the global trade route, or route as some would love to call it, through which more than a fifth of the world's oil supply passes daily. What do you make of this? Are we about to see a global economic crisis as well when it comes to the oil and gas sector?
Well, I believe it is fair to say that the world had actually, envisaged that, Iran will take this step, that of closing the, the passage, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, yeah, of course, 20% of oil traffic globally passes through that channel, passes through that axis, and so it is definitely going to cause energy crisis, or at least the closure will bring about a disruption. So imagine that when the flow of oil, global oil for 20% is disrupted. I mean, everywhere in the world, the impact is going to be felt. And so, in the immediate, I mean, for the common man who doesn't quite know the left from the right of this, conflict, what it means is that, there's going to be a spike in oil prices and, fueling inflation, like they call it. I mean, quite apart from other, consequences that will result from this. But I don't think it will surprise anyone, even Israel and United States. So yes, it was to be expected that Iran will indeed, close the Strait of Hormuz.
Now, Mr. Collins Nweke, could you bring us up to speed with the latest situation? A ceasefire was announced by the United States President yesterday on a social media platform. He said both parties have agreed to a ceasefire. What do we know as at this moment that we speak? Is the ceasefire holding? And do you think this is the end of the escalation between Iran and Israel?
Well, I think, out of the abundance of caution, it is important to wait and hear a pronouncement from the Iranian side about this, ceasefire that President Trump has, announced. It will not be the first time that President Trump, makes an announcement. And then, it turns out to be that, what he has announced is completely different from what was agreed, with the parties. That's one point to be made. Number 2 point to be made is that it sounds funny that President Trump himself ordered an action that could be interpreted as escalation in this conflict, and then all of a sudden makes a U-turn and begin to talk about, ceasefire, peace, and all of that. It remains to be seen how, Iran will react to it. But to be honest with you, if indeed a ceasefire has been agreed, and if indeed a ceasefire is going to be sustained, certainly this is what the vast majority of the world actually wants. Because take Europe, for instance, a traditionally historical ally of the United States, as a matter of fact, when the U.S. tells Europe to jump, they don't ask why. They simply say, how high do you want us to jump? This is how close they have been in matters of, global consequence. But in this particular case, there are signs, very strong signs, that the United States is alone on this. There wasn't even any consultation with the European allies, and you could hear that from the pronouncements of, France. Some European countries have actually condemned the action. So yes, a ceasefire, that would be great, but let's wait a couple of, days to see if it will be confirmed, particularly by Iran, before we could believe that there is truth in it.
All right. I mean, President Trump also did mention that there's going to be a change of leadership in Iran right even before the strike. Do you have any iota of clarity on why the president is pushing for a change when it comes to the Iranians' leadership?
Well, that question, Joe, actually is linked to the response I gave you about his announcement of a ceasefire. Because while Donald Trump is actually talking of a regime change as a deliberate policy of the United States of America, his immediate deputy, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, was actually playing down the prospect of a regime change, saying that it is not an intentional policy of the United States. And then very key members of his administration in their own press conferences are saying something totally different from what Donald Trump is saying. Now, let us assume that it is a policy of the United States of America. Sorry, for want of a better word, I think it could be described as, this is, international TV, so I need to be very careful. But anyway, it is not a policy that is very well thought through. Because if anyone thinks that what is happening in Iran is just, the afterthought of an individual leader, the person is making a very, very strong mistake, because there are some very deep-rooted ideological issues that we are, dealing with here. And Iranians actually understand that. So, remove one leader and bring in another leader, the status quo is not going to change. So, I believe it's a very daft idea to pursue regime change as an intentional policy of the United States.
Especially
managing this crisis.
Especially looking at the recent history of regime change in the Arab world in the last, you look at Iraq, you look at Libya, and what it's turned to today. The United States haven't really deeply thought of the day after this regime changes, and that's why they've been coy about it. But let's talk about Europe and the so-called Western world. It often touts itself as, civilized, and that they talk about the rule-based international order. But it seems these rules are different depending on your religion or color of your skin. Because if we take a step back and go back to how all this started in the first place, the Israeli government decided to preemptively strike Iran. I mean, Iran, under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, has a right to defend itself. So they decided to respond, and then the Americans violated Iranian sovereignty and came through. But if you look at the message coming out of Brussels and most Western capitals, everyone is not talking about how Israel is not signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, how Israel is nuclear armed, how Israel started this chain reaction in the first place by attacking Tehran and murdering its military officers and scientists. So do we have a different international rule-based order, one set of rules for some people and the others? Help us make sense of this, Mr. Nweke.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Benga, for that very poignant question. Do we have, an international rule-based order? Yes, we are supposed to have one, and that is why, post-World War II, the world has, been able to avert a third world war. And let's make no mistake about, about this conflict that is happening. The fear that this might culminate in a third world war is actually far-fetched, at least for now. And the reason actually points to this question that you posed about, rule-based international order, because that is what, countries and even regions, regional blocs, for instance, the EU, that is the Bible that they read on daily basis that determine their action. And yes, it was supposed to be existing, and if everyone followed it religiously, Israel wouldn't act the way it has acted, America wouldn't act the way it has acted. But thank God, there are other parties, in this whole global arrangement that respects, to the letters, those rule-based international order. And, the EU is part of it, because what we are seeing happening, is the formation of, different alliances. So you have these axes of resistance that are aligned to Iran. You are looking at Iran itself, Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon. You are looking at Houthis in Yemen, Iraqi Shiite militias, they are there. And then, covert support, diplomatic support coming from Russia and China. All of these are aligned to, Iran. And they do that for strategic reasons. And so ultimately, there is this fragmentation that if Europe doesn't put its foot down and begin to preach the gospel according to international rule-based order, that things will escalate. And so far, I believe the UN that is supposed to actually mastermind the implication of the international rule order is doing as well. Even the Atomic Energy Agency is pushing back as well. So these are the sort of things that give hope that escalation will be contained, and that ultimately this is going to be resolved, or at least contained diplomatically.
All right. I mean, we've seen these three major players in this war decide to go for a ceasefire. But the question is, for me, for everyone, what was gained, actually? Because the United States, like we rightly said at the start of this show, now positions itself as the big brother. It has been able to stand tall and say, listen, we are not just ones who speak, but we are world powers as you know it. Israel, on the other hand, will be celebrating what it's done to Tehran, breaking down its muscle, as it were, while Iran, on the other hand, would also be celebrating the fact that it was able to stand tall and face the world powers, in this case, be it the United States and Israel. But what we've seen here is a case where the United States has come out very quickly to put out a press statement. And like I also rightly saw during the live television interview, the Vice President agreed and acquiesced to the fact that, yes, there's been a ceasefire. So my question to you is, looking at this holistically, what has been gained, what has been lost? And sadly, some lives have been sniffed just like that in a show of power. Who really has gained from this battle of the wits?
In war, everyone loses. Now, there is also this, saying that, you could win the war, you could win the battle and lose the war. So it is neither here nor there. And that is why, ultimately, people of conscience, people of good reasons, actually understand that the pathway to achieving every strategic interest, every strategic objective of any nation state is through diplomatic routes. Now, those who respect, such diplomatic routes and the rules around them, you see more peace, within them. So the absence of conflict doesn't mean the absence of, disagreements and all of that. It's just that it is managed, very well. Now, Iran and Israel, could be drawn into direct, sustained military, confrontation, likely fought via proxy fronts, like I mentioned. If you take the axis of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, but interestingly, or increasingly actually, spilling into direct missiles or drone attacks, much more than we are seeing now. So ultimately, Israel is losing in this. America is losing in that as well, because like the attack that, Iran carried out in American base, America can say they have gone, unhurt as a consequence of that. And then think of the bombardment that the United States carried out. These are all, aspects of economic disruption in the United States of America, because these are very, very expensive, wars to prosecute, or at least, attacks to prosecute. So no, there are no winners, there are no losers. There are losers on all sides.
Thank you, Mr. Nweke. Now, you did mention, and rightly so, looking at the antecedents of the character and person of the United States president, that even after announcing a ceasefire, that you need to exercise caution and wait for the other parties to make their pronouncements. And rightly so. We have some piece of breaking news in the last few minutes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has agreed to a ceasefire with Iran. I'm sure that changes the conversation now. The Prime Minister, who is wanted by the ICC, said his government has achieved the goals of removing Iranian nuclear and ballistic missiles threat. Do you think, two questions here, Mr. Nweke, do you think the U.S. attacks, the B-2 bombing using bunker buster bombs on Isfahan, Fordo and Natanz has really removed that nuclear threat? And do you think this is the end of this conflagration between Iran and Israel, or maybe they're going to restore rearm and we'll see a part two, maybe not this year, in the nearest future? And as it removed the incentive, because North Korea will be looking and saying, everybody thought we were crazy. We have the bomb, and that's why they don't attack us. That's why they don't violate our sovereignty. So as this attacks by the United States and Iran remove the impetus, or the impetus for Iran to further enrich and maybe seek a nuclear bomb to act as a deterrent against this sort of attacks?
I will start with the last question, and the straightforward answer to that is no. If anything, I believe that it has emboldened Iranians even more, particularly those on the radical wing of the current regime, and also people around the Ayatollah, because like you refer to, the North Korea is an example of a country that holds its head high and say, well, they are not coming to us because they know what we are capable of doing. Now, let us take the worst case scenario that the bunker, busting, bomb that was used, has created, permanent destruction of, the nuclear program. Well, let us not forget that the knowledge and the skills to develop these capacities rest with individuals. Yes.
Yeah, but Israel has assassinated a number of these scientists, of this top Iranian scientists. Yes.
Absolutely, they did. And of course, it is because they realized the question that you have asked, whether, it's part of a whole strategy to actually, destroy, the program completely. But I think it's short-sighted. It's short-sighted because it is absolutely impossible to kill all the people that have the capacity to, rearm themselves in terms of, further development. Some of them are not even in Iran. You see, so it will achieve a short-term, objective, and that short-term objective is, delaying the accelerated speed if they are actually, developing a weapon of mass destruction, because nobody knows that. And then the other question you asked in terms of whether the attack by the United States of America has actually gotten to the core of, the enrichment program. Nobody knows that. Even the Atomic Agency, body has told us that, an assessment has not been concluded. And yes, from what they have seen from aerial, satellite images and all of that, yes, significant damage has been done. But the extent to which it has actually touched the core of it, or whether it was still deposited in that particular site, is something that they do not, have a clue about. More, they need to dig in more to be able to ascertain that. Now, Israel, on the other hand, confirming that there is a ceasefire. I mean, why would that be breaking news? It can be breaking news because, Israel and the United States of America are joined in the hips. So there is no announcement that the United States of America makes that Israel isn't aware of before it was made, and how all of these are choreographed. So it is expected that, the Netanyahu will come out to support, reinforce the statement that Israel has made. That the United States has made. So let us wait a bit further and, hear what Iran has said. But I keep hope alive that indeed a ceasefire has been agreed.
It's going to be a whole lot to discuss, especially in the coming few hours. But let's get to see what the response would be like. If Israel has spoken not quite long, let's wait for the Iranians to also speak. And then let's also see what the United Nations will say. But then again, these conversations are one that we would love to have continually. But hey, our time here is up. Thank you so much, Mr. Nweke, for joining us. And as usual, always giving us very interesting aspects to these international stories.
Thank you so much.